there's nothing.
when they applied for their development that wasn't something we actually
Should be going. Usually about a 30-second, 1 minute delay or so.
Okay, that's great.
but my plan
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can stand here and not obstruct everything. Is that about the angle where you guys are?
Just something that can get like
At the beginning of the year or something.
That's the picture that should be.
I like that idea. They have moving forward. Budget, whatnot. Okay, cool. No, I like, so we do that like next August or whatever. Yeah, I like that idea. I really like that. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mario. Hey, Denise.
I can do better next time.
Just right, that was good. That was good. I didn't hear you say that God is trying to do away with crosswalks.
Are they?
I've been for the last 4 years.
The pedestrian crosswalks or school?
Yeah, keep having accidents at the Salt Lake on the busy intersections. And it's been at the time when they have it. They wipe out the crosswalk. It's been interesting to watch. I haven't heard that in the last 8 But they were actually, when you called down 4 years ago, they said, you guys don't need crosswalks.
I'll give you a writing.
So you have to be a little careful who you're listening to.
Is it because it's proven that it's
Well, if kids at school, young kids, 6th grade down, okay, you give them a crosswalk, and what does it do? Your little minds say, I am now protected, nothing can hurt me. So as long as I'm in the crosswalk, I can't get run over. And then you get killed. And that was their reason.
gives them
Largely,
freedom
yeah.
without really seeing the difference.
Yeah, it was largely at schools that they were having problems. Now, this one little gal that got killed, was my neighbor. And we got hit up to high school 4 years ago. And she was out of the crosswalk. And at that point, I think we put crosswalks in on the west side, or the east side where she got hit. Car coming down, trying to go north. On the east side where you've got the crosswalk now, and she jumped out front of me.
Email from me, what do you want?
Email would be just.
She wasn't in the crosswalk. Immediately, the parents called me.
I'm a lawyer. I was trained as a lawyer. I can't get
You guys didn't have a
It was handy.
crosswalk.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So I'll make a note to send you an email.
On the other side.
And I'm gonna go see my baby.
All right. How old's the baby you said?
Yeah.
What's up?
And that snap, no, there wasn't. That snap
Yeah, it's busy.
deal,
Yeah.
they called it something different when I was there, but that's state law. Those people at those schools, they're one of those schools, I made them turn them into the city every year.
Is there not a crosswalk at
Well,
the
that's why I'm surprised
any
that
place on there? Even at the light?
aren't required
Is there a
No,
crosswalk
they're
at
not.
the light?
They're not.
because they don't
Oh.
have the
It's kind of like if you're building something, you know, and it's got anything to do with the state, then they don't even have to be inspected. Something's wrong with that. But no, you guys are doing great, and I think that's that'll help. You
Okay.
are gonna increase your congestion up there, no doubt about it. But that's okay, because how long does that last? Half hour at most? Half hour.
and eventually people will find a different route if that's the case. If they don't,
You bet. You hold me up for 2 or 3 minutes, which you'll do to a lot of people. And I'm going to find a different way to go around the intersection, even though I live up that road. So,
I'm still interested on how UDOT is implementing the
well,
removal of the
they're
of the
not.
crosswalks.
See, every time they make the news, then somebody will come up, well, we're going to do away with, maybe we ought to be doing away with this crosswalk. And they've done 2. I better go look at the notes and see. But they'd come out, you kill a little pedestrian, and then most of them were at schools, and they would come out and say, we are again. We're gonna have to do, we're doing away with crosswalks on this one. We're gonna put a light in here, so it's positive on this one.
Right.
That's one we did on another.
Oh, really?
And of course, we can't afford to put lights on it.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
Oh, really?
And then the next step, we ought to get some of those speed control signs like they've got over in Orem,
Oh, where they flash if you're
where
going.
they tell you if you're going over the speed limit. And get them around those schools.
I can't remember where I saw one of those, but it was. You can
Yeah.
definitely
So
see
you did maybe about that.
Gunnison. I went to Richfield this weekend, and as soon as you enter into Gunnison, it's there flashing because you drop it down, and people don't realize that it goes from basically 55 to 35.
Oh, I don't
And
think
it's
that you
useful. I
did.
mean,
Yeah.
once you see that flashing light,
Oh,
hey, I got
it gets me every time. Because I'm always speeding. And it just says, you know, you're going to get a ticket, but make your choice. So it's good. No, that was great. Great presentation.
UDOT also suggested having an increased presence from
Yeah.
police.
Well, yeah, but
Can't park.
you don't have enough police to do what you got
That
to
makes
do now.
sense. Yes.
And UDOT
So he
telling
he took
people
that out
to
of
increase the police, that's all fine and good, UDOT, you paying for it. It's just like somebody said, who's paying for this school zone? Well, UDOT ought to be involved.
Right.
It's their stinking road, Canyon Road. And that's why nobody wants it. They just gave it to the county,
Right.
they sure won't do anything.
At the time.
Who's taking responsibility for Canyon Road right now? I thought they moved it
Yeah.
to the county.
County, but the county talked about giving it back to
Yeah.
the city
Well, yeah, 30 years.
after they do the.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's 30 years.
So he didn't even bring that up tonight.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's kind of
Yeah,
something all
that's the deal.
I was under the impression.
They haven't told us that yet, and I was with Mayor Gigi just the other day. And he's mad because his council turned it down completely. But it was, well, they think it is, I don't.
I never figured this out.
I told him, no, and you know, I told him 12 years ago, watch what you're saying, you're gonna get nailed. They've been nailed. And stood right there and watched it. You got
Yeah.
it.
No, I didn't think it was planning. I mean,
But it's fun.
he did have a good point. That moving forward, I want to know
Ray
what
got
the
me
justifications
twice
for
more
the planning
today.
commission, and then that would help me in my
Ray.
decision.
Ray?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ray,
Yeah. I was gonna say Ray Gamble. Ray Proctor.
Ray Proctor. Okay, called me. After he talked to you and
Like, what does that even mean? I'm like, was it 4-1?
Marty.
Like, I don't know.
And then this afternoon he came by, and then this afternoon he called him in. Please get him under control.
Well, why think so?
I died. Yeah.
And he's proceeding with
Well, the thing you want to remember there too, it's kind of like everything I'm telling you. Ray is very forgetful. John had deals all set up, and I made John do it because I was leaving, and somebody had to be there to do what was going on. But he
Oh,
had
you're
things
talking
all
about
ready to go
council
with
or
him.
planning
And
when you guys
Ray
make
doesn't
motions
remember.
and
He
stuff?
can tell me what you talked about this morning.
Right now, during he's going to intro, and then I'm going to take it into a
He
discussion.
asked me, he says, who's this Marty? He thought Rick was the boss. And I said, no. He's losing it really bad.
Let me.
Who said that?
Ray Proctor.
I asked if Ray.
What's that?
Greg, you said.
Scott.
Yeah, we've made suggestions and asked questions. And it never comes back to us. Yeah, but just realize where we are in the process.
Yeah, I think he's,
And they get to alter
Right.
their argument.
Right.
well, guys,
Yeah.
running a hose from his kitchen.
No, I agree.
He's out of water. Everything's dry. I thought when he first hit me that he just had house
Guy
water.
says,
It's all dry. And he, what he's asking for, I finally got him.
yeah,
this
I
afternoon,
got rid
but
of
he
him last
won't
night,
remember that when
but
he
I had
talked to him
recovery
tomorrow.
time.
Anything happening out there in the real world?
What I talked to Reed Mitchell, you know Reed
I was
Waters,
wondering how many you had tonight.
and he claims that I don't think Reed did that, because Reed called me and warned me he was gonna be calling. But he said, I talked to Reed and he said,
Brent.
if it were him, he said, I could go get the lawyer and we
I had
could
a
start
friend
this back
who
up again. All the things you guys owe me and you agreed to
tried to
do.
climb in
And
bed
Ray, I don't even remember what we agreed to do for it.
because she
One time
thought
we were talking to Will, one time we were talking
Brent.
about
she was mad at
paying
him.
you off. or-
He's a white guy.
Married
One time,
with
you
a
know,
wife.
about four
It's
different
like,
things. One
hang
time.
on a second,
I
Mom.
don't know if we ever agreed to anything. I don't ever remember, of course, I wasn't on the council.
Not from regular?
Well, so you've got to go back and get all those agreements. They found the agreement with the church. They found it, you know, to take out it. Now he's starting to talk again about the
Oh, good.
point of diversion. And you
Very
just need to
good.
be, please be careful. Well, you'll end up with Ron Christensen, the water lawyer.
They said that I've
Is
already
what
been
you'll end up with.
your
because
mayor up there.
He'll be the only one. I told Ray today. I said, Ray,
It's really hard for me on Tuesdays.
that is correct. I said,
He said it like 2 or 3 times.
doesn't matter, Ray. You agreed to this. He said, well, you were supposed to move all that dirt off that north fence.
Just watch the movie.
They ordered it downstairs, and we were. I remember David setting that up. I remember we took Scott with us down
You
on
could do an audio right now.
but Ray forget. And just like you said today, we worry all the time.
All us
He
to
ain't
work.
nothing. So please give him a call. I said, you can be guaranteed you'll do it.
Did you get it solved? You should yell, when this is resolved, you should yell at council.
Okay, we're back from our break. We're going to switch things just slightly. I'm going to introduce the subject, and then we're going to have Scott kind of expand on it based on discussions he's had and with the architect and also with staff today. I think there was a really good discussion. And then as a council, we'll kind of figure this out. I made a comment during this last year and a half and also in writing when we talked about what some of the next steps were. And I talked about this concept of an owner's representative. I don't want to get too hung up on the words owner's representative as a title. I'd like it to be more of a concept, a very brief description of what this responsibility would entail. So because I was getting questions about that, I actually wrote something down, and this is what we can talk about after we get further along. In the construction projects that I deal with in my business, they're not big like this, they're smaller. And we are not construction, my partner and I are not construction people. We have to rely upon the expertise of other people. Because of that, we don't know if the prices that were being quoted, if the work that's being done, if the plans that are being submitted or drawn, permitting, we don't know if any of this is really correct, if we should be pushing back, if sourcing has been done. And it's been a little bit eye-opening, particularly with our remodel right now in our Hawaii location, where everything seems to be about 5 times the price. So what we thought we could do, like we did in Evanston, Wyoming, there's no way that we can do this kind of thing in Hawaii, and we're just coming to appreciate that. An owner's rep, in my mind, is a person who does have background and experience in management of large-scale construction projects like what we're discussing here. They speak that lingo. They're familiar with the contracts. They're familiar with architects. They're familiar with the construction trade. When they sit down to talk to somebody about plans or design build or whatever these other concepts are, this is second nature to them. The difference is they work for the people that are going to own the building, not for the people that are selling you the service. Therefore, the function, as I've kind of looked at this, would be to make sure this person with experience keeps our project on time, on budget, and retains all the functionality that we had intended. So the commitment that the council has made, that the committee made and worked through over this last 16 months, so that we can come in on $11 million in construction, we can come in at 9.5 million on the bond or less, and yet we can engineer better solutions and better ways of doing things during construction. I think it's a person with experience that has done multiple of these that are the types that can look at that and say, no, I don't think that's right. And in some cases, because of their experience and the way that they're known throughout this state, when they sit in the room with six owners of construction companies, and they know every one of them by first name, there isn't even this jockeying game playing because we're down at the base level. There have been several people who have expressed an interest in performing this function. And so one of the things that I'd like to talk about with the council is, should we proceed forward in whatever way with this kind of an owner's representative to assist us and assist the staff and the public in making sure that our project comes off the way we want it to be, meets all the needs? And can we write some kind of a job description? It doesn't have to be really detailed, but can we write a job description so that we can advertise this and have qualified people come in and we can interview and talk to them and find out, of all of these people that want to participate, which one of them do we think is going to be able to help us do this? So in doing this, I think a couple of things would happen. What I envision is you would have staff that already has the authority from the council to execute on decisions and retain contracts and those kind of things, combined with this person that represents that knowledge base, and they would work together to take care of the day-to-day aspects of selecting architect, going through plans and design, working with the chiefs and the whatnot, and it becomes a smaller group of people that are dealing with that detail. But they come in on a weekly or bi-weekly basis as necessary, and they present to the council and to the public the main points of where we are in this process and where we might be stuck, what things need to happen. I was very appreciative for the support and the trust that was rebuilt over the last 3 to 4 years, getting to last week, where the 63% of the public finally gave us consent to go ahead and move forward. And I want to help us execute on those commitments so that trust continues and we build upon that trust and our process is transparent. So this would not displace any of the responsibilities of the council, but it does allow us to move forward with a smaller, nimbler body of people to wrap ourselves around the project, someone that we can all feel comfortable with. That's kind of the general definition. So if you want to ask questions now or you ask questions later, either way.
So is this something that we open up to the public, or we seek out people that we know, or how do you get the word out that we're looking for certain individuals to fill this position?
So I think it starts with, if we could define as a council at a high level, and Scott is going to talk a little bit about this tonight, if we can come up with a very short description of what it is we want to do or what we want this person to do. I think staff is very, very good at writing job descriptions. This could then be published in the various ways that we normally publish it. But it's really more for citizens. It's for our own people who have a vested interest in this community to step forward, look at that, and express interest. And then we would go through like a hiring process where we interview and, you know, they're able to come and sit and present their qualifications, and then the council can make a decision based upon what they see and what our needs are, and then that person can then be selected.
And is this volunteer or paid?
Well, I think you have both. Let me describe what I mean. I spent the last 2 days contacting people that I had heard are interested. And it happens to be that some of these people are extremely qualified in the construction industry and with this exact thing. Some of them don't want to get paid. Some of them want to do this as a giving back to the community that they love. I get that. I understand that. That's something I can relate to. There are others that maybe because of circumstances, they probably are not in the same place. And so we would have to define as a council, in the scope of work that we're asking for and in the amount of time commitment, what would we envision and be willing to compensate? I would think at a minimum, if we expected the person to have out-of-pocket expenses, we would cover those. You know, like if we had to send them to Salt Lake or Denver or whatever, or, you know, those kind of things. But I think the salary would be based upon whatever we decide as a council, and then there are going to be some that come in. They're not going to want any money. They want to do this as a public service. And I don't want to reveal who those people are. I think it's their responsibility to step forward and make themselves known. Other questions?
You talked about staff as part of this smaller.
So I'm thinking Scott for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking the two chiefs are going to have to be involved and the judge in the needs part of this, right? Scott might come back and say, Marty has engineering background. He might be part of that. It's really a professional group of people, not not people like me, not people that have no background in either the fire, police, and courts, or the way that you administer these types of things.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Other questions? You're welcome to just think about it for a few minutes while we have Scott present.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah.
We talked about a owner's rep. Why could we not have two citizens?
It could be a group.
Mm-hmm.
As long as there's someone in the group that has actually managed these kinds of projects. Not a novice.
No.
Right? Somebody that is going to get it. I'd like our staff to feel confident that that person is going to make sure their interests are represented. I'd like the public to feel confident that their dollars are properly being looked after because they know this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it would be a combination of outside and, you know, citizen, voluntary, and also staff. So it could very well be more than one. All right, Scott?
Did you compare Evanston, Wyoming to Hawaii, somewhere in there?
Pretty good.
At the time that I grew up, where I grew up, yes.
I grew up in Wyoming. I've been to Hawaii once.
I was not being derogatory about
I know.
Evanston.
I'm just kidding with you.
I walked
Star
50
Valley's
miles
a
in
whole
Wyoming.
different-
Oh, and I didn't grow up in Star
Okay, well,
Valley.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Mario had a pretty good PowerPoint, so I figure I need to show him up a little bit here. So
Did you get a video?
there you go. you get Word, Microsoft Word.
Can you make it a little bigger down the
Yeah, let me.
For the old people,
bottom right corner? Plus sign. Click, click, click. Yeah, there we go. Thank
There.
you. Oh, good, I can see.
Okay, so I want to talk financial timeline. I want to talk about building timeline. and then we'll get into the owner's rep. And I think we want to talk a little bit about the old rec as well, because there's some timing issues with that. But on the financial timeline, we've talked with our financial advisor. We are now authorized now to borrow up to the $9.5 million for this project. I asked our financial advisor, now, how does this work? Do we have to borrow it all at once, or can we borrow it in chunks? And he said, really, for the most part, you're going to sell the bonds one time. So you set the number you're borrowing, you sell them all at one time, and then the money goes into the bank, and the money stays there, and you draw down on it as your construction needs come. But if we wanted to borrow, let's say, $7 million to start, and then wait till later to do the $2.5 million, we'd have to go through another set of issuance, another cost to do that. And then he says the risk you run is just the interest rates changing on you. So already in the last 2 or 3 weeks, interest rates have gone up. I think he said almost 0.5 basis point. And so where we had our extremely low ones, and when you look at the 15-year history, they're still really low.
So we're talking 2.3.
Yeah, something like that. So before they were probably hovering around 2, now we're a little bit above that.
Is that Trump's fault?
Yeah, I don't know.
McMullen's.
Not going to make a comment. So right now we have scheduled to do what we call a parameters resolution, and that's when the council says that we are authorizing really the staff and our financial advisor to go through the process of borrowing the money. That's what the parameters resolution is. It states to our citizens, this is what our intent is to borrow, and we start the process. After we adopt the parameters resolution, we get a bond rating. So they look at our financial situation. The reason a general obligation bond is you get some of your lowest interest rates and your best ratings is because you have the full backing of the citizens of Pleasant Grove. They have voted this in. So the rating will take us a month. There's a process. We go to San Francisco to meet with rating agencies. We go through the financials of the city. They spit us out a rating, and then that rating in turn helps dictate the interest rates in which we can sell the bonds. So the bonds sold would probably be mid to late February before we would have the money in the bank, if we followed this. So if we're going to move on this project and we want to get started right away, this is the recommended timeline in order to do that. Any expenses leading up to bond funding, we have police and fire impact fee monies. We can use those if there are expenses incurred before February. And even if we were to exhaust all those funds, which I don't think we would, we can spend general fund money and then reimburse ourselves once the bond proceeds are received. We don't anticipate we'll need to do that, but in our resolution, when we put together for the election, it does say that we have the ability to do that. We will likely exhaust all the impact fees before we start drawing down bond money because there's a timeline on those impact fees and we need to use them. And this is the only project we can use them on. So there's not this option of holding on to these impact fees for a later project. So any questions on the financial timeline?
You may have said this, Scott, but if we were to draw down the whole 9.5 and then we end up not spending all of that, do we have a mechanism to sell back, or what happens if if let's say $500,000 doesn't prove to be needed somehow?
Yeah.
What do we do in that situation?
We need to use the money. There's not ability to buy once we sell the bonds, there's like a 10-year callback feature, and there's not an ability to turn around and repurchase those. So if you're like the school district, when they get approval for $386 million, they won't do that all at once. They'll do that in increments over a year. They'll do $50 million one year, $50 million the next year. Our bond is not to that size where it would necessarily make sense. Now, if that's something the council wants to proceed and to do it that way, we have that ability.
Did you say that was because of cost of issuance?
Yeah, we'd have to go through a second cost of issuance. So we go through the process again. It becomes a second series of bonds, so we have to go get another rating, which costs money for us to do that. And then, to me, the bigger risk is on the interest rates. I mean, we could end up shooting ourselves in the foot and paying more in interest than just having that money. I know that, I mean, we've talked a lot about the 9.5 or less. I know that there's a lot of ramifications that come with how we're going to proceed on that. But that's kind of what we have in front of us. We don't have an ability, if we have a few 100,000 left over, we would need to use it on the project.
Scott, when you get to the actual time frame that we make the decisions to draw down the money, could you also tell us what the cost of issuance might be if we decided to take part of it and then, like half now, half later?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I can track down that cost and get a number for us. Okay, any other questions on financial?
So while you put it in the bank, are you accruing interest?
Yeah, and there's regulations. Back when interest rates actually had something there, you could use the interest rates as part of your project, but you could not hold the funds for longer than a certain amount of years, and then you'd have what was called arbitrage. And if it looked like you were because if you're borrowing it at 2.5% and you're getting 5%, there's I don't know if negative arbitrage, I don't know if we call it, if it gets into the illegal realm, or there's a penalty that we pay or something, but they're trying to avoid bonding at a low rate and then just saving money and hoarding money. So there is a timeline in which we have to spend the money.
And I was just thinking about it during the construction phase.
Yeah. Yeah, so if we have 9.5 million, yeah.
Microphone, please.
Your microphone's off. They might need to.
The money will be in a interest-bearing account. When we get the bond proceeds in, we'll start to get what we get at the state pool, whatever the state pool interest
Less
rate
than
is.
1%.
Yeah, it's less than 1%, but that's what we'll get.
Well, and on 9.5 million, at least to start, there's a little something there. That could be some tens of thousands of dollars when it's all said and done, but it's not going to be this huge chunk of change. But there will be something there, but it's something we just roll right back into the project.
One really quick construction question or architect question. Do they do so like, for example, 50% down, 50% upon completion, or you just pay them before the work is done for the work? You pay them after it's all done?
Yeah, just like a sewer project or whatever.
They can draw down, they'll draw down and get partial.
Each month we'll get a bill, and they'll show this is what we did and this is what we spent it on, and then we pay them.
Well,
And
and you
that's
keep
what-
a
that's what we're talking about.
retainage.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't pay up front.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me say up front, I'm not a construction guy, and this kind of goes to the point of the owner's rep, where, and I've done this before. I did this in South Ogden. We built a city hall, police, fire station, and I was in some ways our owner's rep, and I don't know much about construction. So when I was in that process, I really leaned on our architect to help us through the process to make sure that we were getting the quality that we expected. And we had a wonderful architect and had a great relationship, and we trusted them that we were getting good advice. So as we look at this and say, okay, we now have some funding available, what's our next steps? Well, our next step is to decide really what type of process that we're going to use. So there's a design bid build, which is the standard. Yes, thank you. A little handout, a visual. The front page is the design bid build, which is in a lot of ways is the traditional way. You hire an architect, they design everything up to the construction documents, and then you bid on those construction documents. That's when your general contractor comes in, and then they take it from there, and they build the building. That's one way to do it. The other way, and there's different variations on this. Some people call it CMGC. I was talking with Think Architecture, and I was asking them, okay, so tell me, generally, how could this be done? And they gave us the different options. They're the ones who provided, these two handouts. And they said they call it architect-led design build. But in essence, your architect and your general contractor, who they call their construction manager. So CMGC is construction manager, general contractor. They come on right away. And you can see that their influence is pretty minimal at first, but both the architect and the contractor are working through this all at the same time. I talked with Heber City. They just built a public safety building, and I asked them what method they used, and they used the CMGC. And I said, well, what were the benefits? And he said, our biggest benefit is we were able to value engineer before the construction documents were ready and before this building was starting to be built. We were able to value engineer a lot of things. They were on we're all on tight budgets. They were on a tight budget just like we're going to be on a tight budget. And they were able to just solve problems before they started digging in the ground. And so that's the benefit of
Scott,
doing that.
you're talking about the second page,
Yeah,
right?
the second.
So on this one, it says architect led.
Uh-huh.
Is there one where the architect works for the contractor?
Not necessarily, no. To my understanding, no. Does anybody know any different in the room?
When we did the rec center, I think we talked to someone that proposed a
I think we did the rec center this way, the CMGC.
right. but
They
there was
generally
somebody-
team, Mayor. They'll team an architect and a construction manager together. So, for example, a CERC that we worked with, I think we worked with them on the rec center. I think they did that as well. But they would team with an architectural firm, and maybe that's how when you go out for a request for qualifications or request for proposals, that they would come together as a team and say, we would propose to be your team to design and build this project. And so they work together as a team. Now, the construction manager, for example, CERC, they actually don't, so they hire out all of the contractors to do the work. They are purely doing the construction management, representing the owner, working with the architect, and making sure the project gets built correctly. So
Okay.
there is a tie there. Doesn't have to be there, but generally it seems to happen that way.
Well, when I talked with Heber, they did it slightly different. They hired their architect first, but then the architect helped them right off the bat get the general contractor on board. And so the general contractor they were together through the process, but the architect helped them obtain the general contractor. So again, you can do them all at the same time, or we can start with the architect and then move into the general contractor. But at least as I've looked through this, the recommended way is to do it this way. So whether we're architect first or whether we do them both at the same time is something that we can consider. But
Wait, which one are you pointing at?
sorry, the second option, the CMGC.
Well, so in my limited background, with your architectural firm, you are going to have a project manager that's going to be assigned to it, and then also your construction company is going to have a project manager assigned to it, correct?
Well, so I'm not exactly sure. I asked,
Like a project lead or I don't know, what's another word for it? A superintendent. So your architectural firm.
Can you use your microphone? Sorry.
I am so sorry.
It's okay.
So.
I want to be able to hear you.
So your architectural firm is going to be assigned your project. There's going to be one person that's going to be over it, a superintendent, or, and then your construction company, depending on which construction company gets your bid, will also have a project coordinator or superintendent for just your project, and that's who you're going to be conversing with 99% of the
Yes.
time. Okay.
yeah, in South Ogden, we hired a firm.
Mm-hmm.
We got the guy that we worked with on the day-to-day basis from the firm, and then we hired a general contractor, and we got their superintendent that was
Right.
on site each day. And we did our conversations with those two as far as how things were going and what was happening. I think that's what you're saying.
Right. So there is that other layer of management communication.
Yeah, so like I said, I sat down with Scott Wilkinson. So Scott Wilkinson is the architect that helped the Public Safety Building Committee through the process. And it's a careful conversation because Scott's interested in this job. Think Architecture is interested in being the architect and even doing the CMGC and all that. So I wanted to,
Can you hear my?
sorry, I wanted to keep a little bit of separation to getting advice from them without creating a conflict for them or a particular bias from them. And so, again, they gave us the brief little handouts, and we got pretty general in our discussion. That's why I talked with Heber City to say, okay, tell me how you guys did it. And they did it, in essence, the same way that Think was saying, here's what we recommend is the most efficient way to do this. But the idea would be we do RFP. We just don't go out and hire an architect. We go through the RFP process to obtain an architect. Or if we want to, we can do the RFP process to get our architect and our contractor on at the same time. And we just, at that point, they partner together. The architect is the general contractor they want to work with. They come together and put a bid together. And then we observe it and say, okay, this is something we want to pursue. So because of my lack of experience, I'd almost prefer we hire the architect first and then they help us through the rest of the process. Now, if we're looking at somebody in our community who's going to help us with some of the owner's rep responsibilities that knows this way better than I do, which is probably plenty of people, they might be able to hold our hand a little bit through this process and help us if that's going to be our first step, is getting that person on board as opposed to having an RFP for the architect ready by the early part of next week. So that's going to be kind of direction from the council as far as that's concerned. When I asked to think about the timelines, if we just went right to getting the architect on board, we'd have our RFP written by the end of November. We'd probably do, because the holidays are going to kind of slow things down a little bit, but by early January, we could have our interviews and our selection of the architect. I got to be careful on putting a start construction date because who knows, really. But generally speaking, they said if things fall into place, you could be turning dirt by late summer. So we're going to be at least 6 months into design, in essence, is what they're saying. So this is a projected timeline, but please, I don't think we tell people, hey, for sure we're going to be digging by July, because I don't think we know that. We'll know that better once we get our architect on board and once we start design. This was just a potential timeline that they gave to us. So on the owner's rep, and I think the mayor covered this very well, owner's rep means about probably 10 or 15 different things, and really we just need to define what it means for us. For some, it is actually putting out an RFP and hiring a professional architectural firm to be our owner's rep throughout the process, and then they're the ones that interface with the architect that we've hired to design the building, and they're the ones that interface with the construction people. If we hire a professional like that, there's a cost, and there's a pretty good cost to that. When I asked Heber, how'd you guys do it? And they said, well, we had an internal committee. We had our police chief. They didn't do a fire station. They just did a police building. We had our police chief and our city engineer. Those were our two people. They were the ones who really called all the shots. If there was something big, they would get it back in front of the city council, but for the most part, they had a budget they had to stay in, and that was their mandate. Get the building built, have it meet your needs, stay within your budget. And they were, and they went, and that's what they did. So they didn't have somebody from the community helping them. They did not have a paid professional sitting at the table helping them, and they were able to manage. And again, they said the architect helps. The architect you hire holds your hand through that for the most part. The benefit I see of kind of having this committee, owner's rep committee, is that the citizen at large, if we can get somebody that's qualified, that has built buildings before, that can speak the lingo, because our chiefs can probably hang in there a little bit. I don't know what expertise our judge has in building. But because when we get into the design part of this, the chiefs are going to have a specific role as far as form, flow, function, needs of the particular departments. But to have a citizen at large that's sitting in this committee with us saying, when we had our public safety building committee meeting and we were looking at floor plans, I think it was Steve Schrader said, you can do that wall, that hallway looks like it's 8 feet wide. You could probably do that 6 feet wide. That's not something I think anybody else in the room is going to pick up on. But that could save us square footage in the building and in turn save us money. And so I think that's why that's the benefit of having somebody that has a little bit of knowledge when it comes to that. They can pick up on those things and maybe save us a couple dollars. So again, if we'll look for direction from the council, but I think what I heard the mayor propose is we can in essence write up a job description and say, this is what this owner's rep will do. And it can almost be an RFP where we can list on it, what's your fee? And if some are volunteer, they can just write volunteer. If some are saying I need, $1,000 a month, then they can say my fee's $1,000 a month to provide the service. And then we can sit down and decide who that is, because we'll have them list their qualifications, we'll have them list their experience in whatever, so that we can have a comfort that we're getting somebody that's going to be able to help us in whatever that manner is. So again, one way to do it would maybe be to get our owner's rep on right away, and then they can help us through the process of working through the design, the CMGC or whatever. Or we can do the owner's rep in conjunction with getting the RFP for our architect and start getting the RFP done for that so we can get the architect on board sooner rather than later. Or we can work at where we actually do the architect and the construction manager at the same time as well. So I think there's kind of three options there. My comfort level, my preference would be is that we get the architect on soon and we work through that process. We figure in conjunction with that, we do the owner's rep process. We run those simultaneous. We get our architect and owner's rep maybe on board at the same time. And then our committee and the architect then could start through the process of getting the general contractor on board.
More on your...
Yeah, and the last one is just the old rec. I think we need to communicate this. We need to be sensitive to the community as we went through this process on deciding location, and we talked a lot about the old rec. We need to, I think, make sure that we handle this properly. So what we've done so far as staff is we have looked at the last time for this year, not necessarily this calendar year, but for our basketball season, we have junior jazz practice. February 28th is our last scheduled practice. So at this point, from March 1st on, we won't be scheduling the building. We do have boutiques, we have dances, we have people that come in and want to do that, and we can schedule them up to March 1st because we're still going to be using the building. But when March 1st rolls around, if this is something that we wanted to, well, let me step back. We will want to have a plan before March 1st.
So Scott, I just want to clarify. Yeah. I want to make sure, I know I'm double speaking here and just overemphasizing this. That's so that we don't have to turn around and tell people, I'm sorry, that thing that you were planning in August is no longer available to you, and now you have to go find another location.
Correct.
This is purely to, it doesn't mean that on March 1st, a bulldozer's going to show up. It means we don't want to create a problem for people that are trying to use this thing.
Yeah, because we have some that schedule a year in advance.
Right.
And that's exactly where we're at. I think we need to have flexibility on how that's going to happen. Again, I think once we get an architect on board and we talk about timeline, because if the demolition is going to be, if we're getting ready to put a shovel in the dirt and build in July, that means the demolition of that rec center will probably need to be in June, which is during Strawberry Days, which we probably don't want. So I think we as a city need a little flexibility on when that date is. But in the meantime, we put together public information on how we're going to honor this building. Even internally, as we talked about it today, there was like 5 ideas that here's what we need to do. Here's some options for us to take a look at, to get back in front of the council to say, if this building's going to be raised, here's what we're going to do to make sure that its honor is met, that people can, whether it's an interior wall, whether it's saving certain bricks or a lot of brick or some brick, selling brick for some that might be interested in some of the brick, I mean, there's kind of this myriad of things that we can do, and we just haven't really sat down as staff to make recommendation to you, council, yet, obviously.
We would actually assign someone on staff to oversee the memorialization and respect for that facility if it were decided to come down.
Yes.
We would do that, and that would take place.
Yeah, and you said it so much better than what I was just saying, but yeah, and that will take a couple months. I mean, it's just not a simple thing, but we want to make sure we do that right.
So it sounds like if we're not going to do construction through June because of Strawberry Days, can we schedule events through that day?
Well, I'm just talking about when the building needs to come down.
Correct, but if we're not going to do that before June.
So here's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we just followed the plan that Scott outlined, just exactly the way he outlined it. And an architect comes in and says, you better have that building down by February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven forbid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not scheduling. Obviously, you're not going to be scheduling through March.
Mm-hmm.
The point being is we probably ought to get a few of these knowledgeable individuals in the same room,
Give us a timeline.
put some kind of a timeline together on how this is normally done,
Okay.
and then we make that decision. We're not scheduling
Okay.
beyond that.
And thanks for clarifying that, because if we get into timeline and it's determined it's not going to be till May 15th, then we can schedule up to May
Right.
15th.
Okay.
And if we can have that decided by mid-January, it's just that we'll get phone calls saying, okay, we want to schedule this for, let's say, May 15th.
Just to be safe, we're going to say March. Yeah. That's better. Yeah. Okay.
You need another one?
Here, use mine, I don't.
Lynn's the one that doesn't need one.
You know, Lynn's is always on and always working.
Yes.
She's always got the green light on.
He does not. It did.
So that's where we're at. What we're looking for from direction from the city council is really the three options I pointed out. Do we get the owner's rep first and they help us through the process? Do we do owner's rep and get the architect on board in conjunction right now? Do we focus on getting the architect and the general contractor in the same RFP? So that's the three options.
So are we discussing?
Yeah, we can discuss.
Okay, so my opinion is we get the owner's rep, the job description gets written up, we interview the owner's rep, people who are interested in that position, and then I would like the owner's rep to be involved in the hiring process of the architects, and so I'll be working closely with them along with the other people on the committee, including the chiefs, you, who else is on there? The judge. So they're all part of the hiring committee since they'll be working very closely probably for the next 1 to 2 years,
Yeah.
possibly with the architect. So I would like them to be involved in the process. So I feel like they're the first
Option
piece.
number one.
Option number one.
Very good.
Other discussion?
I've got a few questions and some comments. I commend this approach. This is great. This is very open. This is very transparent. I like what I'm hearing, Mayor and Scott. This is excellent. One question I have about this architect-led design build second example is whether there are any downsides. I mean, you talked about some of the advantages of doing it this way.
I have one.
Sure.
I'll use my poor judgment skills as a business owner. We did a project in Hawaii several years ago, same theater. We brought our GC on, a friend who really understood construction. We turned him loose and told him what we could afford, and he got the job done at 25% less than what we estimated the job would be done for. When the second project came along to convert this theater and remodel it, we were going to go with an architect on island. The price tag came back and estimated $800,000. We were approached by a mainland-based architect that came to us and said, that's ridiculous. We met with them extensively. They showed us all their experience and said, we can do that job for $400,000. The job is over $800,000 now.
You say 800,000 that you're paying the architect?
The cost of the job, instead of being 400, is now 800.
So
I think you need.
I'm not saying it's a silver bullet.
You need controls in place by someone who understands what they're doing to manage whoever you're hiring. to make sure that you're not getting smoke blown up your nose. Sorry. Gonna hear some local terms here. That's pretty bad.
Not
Yeah,
legal yet.
So, broadly speaking, my question is that, with the architect-led design build strategy, can we end up with some scope creep? Can we end up with other kinds of problems? If we get a project manager owner's rep from a totally different state that doesn't understand the costs on a Hawaiian island or whatever, could we run into problems?
One thing when I talked to Scott about that, he said, generally you just set a guaranteed maximum price. And you just settle and say, here's how much money we have and this is how much we can spend. And then at that point, if, as the bids come in, as the design gets to the later stages and all of a sudden there is a scope creep and you're looking at that saying, okay, here's the guaranteed maximum price, so what are you cutting?
But isn't scope creep generally my fault?
It's generally, I would say yes, it's probably generally more driven by the person that's having the work done because, they're looking around saying, well, no, let's make this a little bigger or let's redesign this. Some of that stuff, again, I've only done this once. We had scope creep in the project we did, and it was driven by a couple individuals in our city that, demanded that we had certain things. And, it's just part of the process. So we want to protect against that. That's why, again, I'm not expert enough to say, here's the absolute downsides, other than I was told here's what the upsides are. So, that's why I'm suggesting if we have somebody in our citizenry that can sit with us and say, well, here are some of the downsides, and let's not do that. Let's do design, bid, build. That's better. Or if they're saying, something that has a little. Okay.
So that's what I'm wondering is, do we have to make the decision tonight on the type of construction process that we want, or can we get the owner's rep and have their input and the owner's rep? Well, I don't know
What do you guys think?
Well, and that's, I think, I'm trying to answer that question because option number one is let's get the owner's rep on and they can help hold our hands through the process.
That's what I would prefer because I don't have a clue about this.
Yeah.
I mean, I need someone to give me the advantages, disadvantages to each. What would be best? I mean, a process that works good for a, Alpine School District $360 million bond might not be the best process for our building.
Yeah.
So I just need someone with the expertise to help me, give me the information so I can make that decision. So I wouldn't feel comfortable making a decision on this right now, but instead getting the owner's rep and also the input from the chiefs and the other people on that. Is it committee? I don't know what you want to call it. Okay.
Call it the owner's rep committee.
The owner's rep committee.
The owner's rep committee with their input saying this would be the best for our city at this time.
What do the rest of you think?
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
the other question, or the comment you made was that your preference would be to bring the architect online at the same time as the owner's rep, so we can be doing those searches simultaneously. And I think that makes some intuitive sense to me too. I mean, is the hope there to accelerate the process?
That's a timeline issue, yeah. If we do the owner's rep first, it's likely we won't have that person on board till maybe mid-December. Then it pushes things a month or two, and I don't think that's a big deal. Yeah.
It's already been 3 years at this point.
Yeah, in other words, if our guess is correct here, we're going to save more money by doing the work before we put a shovel in the ground.
Yeah, and I mean, just one of the things, getting the architect on board as soon as possible is, they are really the pros. We can have pros particular to public safety buildings. So I don't know if we have anybody in our community that's ever been part of a construction of a public safety building. Maybe in other facets of that can, again, with the generalized stuff, be very helpful to us. An architect that's done 15 of these buildings could say, okay, we've done this 15 times, here's the most efficient way to do it. But to do the owner's rep first, personally, no problem with that. In fact, that would probably give me a little bit of ease of mind and comfort on my level.
Other feedback on process, timing?
I'm so excited. Look at us talking about this.
So I'll speak up. I like the option one. I like getting the owner's rep into the mix quickly and start going down that road as fast as we can.
Okay, now caveat, I just want to make sure everybody's understanding before you just vote on this thing. It does mean that we're recommending we still have that public involvement from someone from our public who is trusted and knowledgeable, but the group of people that meet on a regular basis is reduced.
Mhm.
And it facilitates decision making and I don't know, I'm trying to speed. And yet at the same time, there's accountability because they come back to the council, to the staff, to the public, and report.
I do, and I like the opportunity for them to help facilitate this, the chiefs, the judge, staff, to help facilitate the option or the choice for the owner's rep.
Okay.
Because I think it's vital. I think it's key. They're going to be working with them all the time.
Did you have an opinion or more comments or questions?
No, I guess well, let me say this. I think there are aspects of architectural recruitment that we could begin tomorrow. I mean, there are things we could start doing, putting out the RFP and having owner's rep online in time to be involved in the final decision if that achieves some efficiencies for the timeline.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing tonight, mostly I think it's important that our owner's rep have a level of independence and a level of total commitment to the taxpayer. And so I think that's going to be an important qualification I'll be looking for, experience in construction. And I have been approached by several that would be willing to do it for free. So there are lots of options and people that I think would be competent. So I'm comfortable with what I'm hearing tonight. I think this is a good discussion. Good start.
All right, I actually do have some things. I had my orange moment, but now I'm back to control. What did she say?
I said, now you're back to green.
Now I'm back to green. I also love what I'm hearing. I do, of course, because of my personality, I want to go faster, 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 but I also want to be smarter, smarter, smarter. There are a lot of decisions to be made. I do, as Ben said, I think there is from what I understand, we have to RFP out the architectural, even
You don't
though.
have to, but I mean, that's
So
something
is
we're
there,
gonna wanna do.
is there a
We
reason?
don't have to, but it would be wise.
Yes.
Okay. I just feel that Think has put so much time and effort already.
It would still be
Be
wise.
Thank you for the wisdom. All right, I'll wait. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of decisions, and I also do understand that decision by committee usually does have a bogging effect. And so I think streamline committee, streamline conversations. But I will say this. Ben is going to watch out for the taxpayer dollars. I want the owner rep to also be an advocate for the quality of the building. I don't want to. Anyway, was that? Did I express that well enough?
I'll just echo what you said. In that short little thing that I wrote, it was budget, adherence to the budget that we've all agreed to, the timeline, and all the flow and functionality
Yes.
that these departments need to get the job done.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean a tin hut, right? It means something respectable, the best bang for the buck.
Yes. Okay.
Lynn, you're probably the one on the council, I think, that has the most construction management background. Is that right?
Probably.
Yeah, like by decades.
Yeah.
You want to weigh in a little bit and give us some advice here?
Sure, be glad to.
With your microphone?
I
Thanks.
go. I yell loud enough. I can reach.
Well, that's okay, but the people online can't hear you yelling.
I think that option number one is the way to go. I think we need to get going, hit the ground running. Let's get moving. But I think also that one representative that you pick out better be the best you can get your hands on.
Yeah, and I think that that decision should be made in public by this group. the
I
council.
would agree with that.
It should be an interview process with resumes submitted and presentations.
Yeah, I think it's almost an RFP, and we say, experience, what your fee is. Here's what the expectations are. A weekly meeting. Here's I'll write it up.
Yeah.
I'll let the mayor take a look at it before we send it out. But
Now, can we talk money for a minute?
Yeah.
I imagine not all of the people that might apply are in a position to donate their lives for the next 18 months to see a project through, is there a value that the council is willing to look at as compensation, or how do you want to handle that?
Mayor, can I just suggest, I suggest that we let them give us what their fee is.
What the fee?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
is
we
it
don't
fair-
set a fee, we just say, what would you expect your compensation to be to do this role?
Okay.
And so then, we just can take a look at it and say, this person has extensive experience, they're awesome, they're $1,000 a month. We have the volunteer who doesn't have as much experience, that probably isn't who we want, and we just have that option to say, because it's not a bid, it's a request for proposal, we can say, because of the experience, we're gonna pay that. But we let them, I think, set what their fee is.
Okay.
Instead of us setting that.
I think I'd sure agree with you. I sure agree with you on that, Scott, but I think that's going to be the very best money you spend on this entire project. And $100,000 is nothing if you've got the right person making those calls.
Well, if we do a true RFP and put it out on BidSync, we will have professional groups that will bid.
Yeah, and I think for that particular thing that we're talking about, we want to start with people in Pleasant Grove.
I agree.
And so,
Because there are actual qualified people in this community who have decades of experience that have expressed interest.
and that's, just sounds we're all understanding that that's our level of reach out will be putting it on our website and not putting it on BidSync
Right.
and opening it up to the world. If the council's fine with that, that's.
Is the council okay with that?
I do have a question on the cost list that Scott came up with. Is there a line item for this?
No.
Okay.
We
His-
could include this in the cost of the project.
Well, that's what I
If
was
we end
wondering.
up
If they had,
paying- Yeah, this would be part of the project.
When he gave us our cost estimates, when Mocha gave us the cost estimate, there was a number for owner's rep. Scott's numbers did not have a number for an owner's rep in his cost estimate.
We're going to include that and make the person work it out so that it's included.
Well, sure.
Drop it, so save enough money so that their cost is covered.
Well, the cost estimates are what they are. I mean, that's just
so is
somebody saying, here's
is
what
it a
is.
percentage of the project, or is it an actual
The
figure?
way the Mocha did it was a percentage of the project.
Okay. So like a 1%, 2%.
2%, I believe.
2%.
What would be the disadvantage to opening it up to outside people?
I can give you an example.
Okay.
I was really pleased with the way the rec center project worked. I mean, I was super pleased. Cirque did an excellent job. These guys were professional. When we would meet with them, just everything they did, and they ended up doing a lot of private sector work in our community after that for other people that were very impressed. Project was done quite well. The turmoil in our own community over this project has been a little higher than we experienced with the rec center by magnitudes. And I would say that having a person locally vested is going to bring the credibility level sustained. 62, 63%, it's going to hit 70 to 80. You're always going to have the people that do not want government spend, period. You can't do anything about that. You're going to get the other people on board because they see someone qualified from their community that's looking out for the interests of the community.
And actually, I would say that very same thing with as many subs and as many contractors as we can possibly do.
Sure.
If we can keep the money in Pleasant Grove, hallelujah.
That's one thing they mentioned, the benefit of doing the CMGC is that the construction manager will give us an opportunity to view who the subcontractors are going to be, so that if there is a local preference, if the dollars are negligible, that we have that opportunity to say that. If it's just a straight design bid build, what they were representing is the general contractor is going to go hire the subs, and we're not going to have a say in that. So.
Right.
Any other comments? We all done
Meeting
on
must be
mics?
getting late. Everybody's microphones
Okay,
are
so
going out.
I want to ask the council then, you've all said this and I just want to formalize it. The process is going to be, we have we have established a very high level, small description that Scott will take and turn into a job description. Salary will be negotiable based upon the desires of the individuals. We're going to advertise this widely and publicly within our community. We will do public interviews, and if I'm not mistaken, when we discuss qualifications, that can be done in an executive session where they leave the room, so we're not doing this in front of them, but we have a private deliberation and go, you know, yeah, this person, that person, etc. But then the decision needs to be made back in public. Okay. All right. So that would be the process, and we do this as soon as we can. Are we okay with this?
Can I ask, as council and mayor, what is the legality of us, like, anyway, being,
What's your role?
okay. No. But on that short list, citizen at large, or on the short list of that committee? Well, I'm just saying, can we come to the meetings, or?
Yes, I think so. My opinion, you guys, you know.
I think
you're-
the meetings can be as open as they've been.
Absolutely.
I would
Well,
love
I
to
think
them to
they
be
should be
open.
live streamed if
It's
possible.
the decision making, I think, that needs to be
Away from us.
smaller.
Yes.
I mean, you know,
Yes.
balanced but smaller.
I was just wondering if I could show up and Eric and Lynn could show up at the same time.
No.
No?
If we advertise it as a public meeting,
Yeah, if we advertise them as council, there's a form in the council that may be present at the public meeting, the answer is yes. Under the exception of a purely informational meeting, if there's anything in that meeting that's brought again to the council for approval, process by having a forum at the first meeting. So I'd rather not get into the muddy waters. Let's keep it clean.
When we pick carpet color, we'll bring it all back.
so
Not
you'll,
interested in
does
carpet
that
color.
mean we'll advertise as a public meeting, but no decisions by the
You guys
council?
decide how you want to do it. Either you decide ahead of time that not a forum's going to go, certain one, up to 2 can go to any meeting. So you decide beforehand, you're never going to have a forum, in which case you don't need to advertise anything. If you want a forum to be able to be present, then we're going to advertise.
But that doesn't mean that we are going to make a decision that's binding in that meeting.
Just advertise it that there's going to be a forum there, it's going to be a public meeting, decisions will be made. but
I
then
kind of
we'll-
like the second option where
Yeah, I think to
anyone
be
can
more
show up.
transparent, we need to make
Guys
it
okay with
public.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can come. Okay. All right, we good? All in favor? Any opposed? There you go.
Thank you.
We good, Scott?
Yes.
How quick can you make this happen? Okay. And how long will we advertise?
You think that through and,
Can you give me an estimate?
uh,
Not that we're going to
2
hold you
weeks.
to the date.
2 weeks.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, we'll do our interviews on the 25th. All right, 100 East. Scott reminded me that it's not on the agenda, but I think we need to mention the status on this. You remember last week we were about to make a decision on approving taking ownership for that road, and then and I kind of talked you guys out of it. I don't know how else to put that. It was based on there was an election going on, and Tuesday I had lunch, and I received information that made me seriously question whether or not we were acting a week or two prematurely. So I talked with Scott after all of the confusion of the election was over, and I said, could you meet with the same person without me, talk to them, ask questions, and then let's compare notes and see if we both understood the same thing. What we came away with and what was clarified, it doesn't exist. And so we're at a point where we think that this should be back on our agenda at the next decision-making meeting for our consideration.
Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have a member of the Cedar Hills City Council here, and I'm wondering if we want to give her a couple minutes to let us know where they're at with their process.
You bet.
If that's okay, Jenny Reese.
Jenny, can we give you a microphone?
Take mine, it works.
Lynn hasn't run the batteries out
Fresh
yet. The rest of
battery.
us have.
You might have to hold it.
Just talking to it like this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not here representing the council. I just want to make that clear. I came off on my own accord. I think you guys know that in our last city council meeting, the one prior to tonight, we actually rejected the agreement that the
Right.
county wanted us to enter into. And from our perspective, our mayor has met with Commissioner-elect Ivy and Commissioner Lee, who have both indicated that they would be willing to take the $9.3 million to fix the road as we had discussed, and then after it was fixed, to meet with the two cities to discuss ownership in the future. And so that's what we're hoping will be accomplished, which is that we can address the issues that need to be addressed without requiring the cities to first enter into this agreement. We're half the size of Pleasant Grove. You have a much larger commercial base, and so the financial repercussions for us are much greater. I also know that from talking to Sid briefly, some of the projections that we've been given on ongoing maintenance is vastly different from what you guys have. So there are concerns that we have on our end. So we would really like to meet with your council and discuss those together so we can be on the same page. But our hope is that we could together meet with the commissioners in January once Commissioner Ivy has taken office, since they have said that they're willing to move forward with fixing the road without that contract being signed and that commitment being made, and deciding together as the two cities what makes sense moving forward.
And we were on that hunt this week. That's why we expedited it and delayed last week. Same information. But what we've learned is the current commission and staff may make that decision without us prior to the end of the year, at which point the option to change that in the future may be moot or take longer.
Right. And I think if Pleasant Grove Council was willing to meet with our council this year, our council would be open to that, to have those discussions.
We're willing to enter to have a discussion. I don't think that's an issue. It's just that we're looking at the situation and reading the tea leaves just a little differently.
Right.
But we're not, this isn't a Pleasant Grove versus Cedar Hills thing. We're totally on board with that. But we don't want to end up in a situation where we're getting cut off at the knees, as has been described. Shouldn't even go into some of this, should I? We do not want to end up with a very small amount of money and a patch job going on immediately when there could have been a proper job done which could last us for the 20 to 30 years.
Right. And that's understandable. And that's why I think it would be beneficial if the councils could meet together, because if you're getting different information than we are, it does kind of put us in competing with each other if we're being told one thing and you're being told another. So we're making decisions based on the information that we've received. You're making decisions based on information that you've received. So I still think it would be great for the two councils to meet and lay everything out on the table, everything that you've received, all the information that we have, and then at least then we've had the discussion. And at that point, if you have to make the decision to move forward on your own, at least you've heard the concerns that we've listed.
Sure.
We've shared information that we've both
Let
received.
me just take a brief, quick poll here. Are you amenable to making that happen before the next 2 weeks?
Yes.
Before we have to have that decision-making meeting.
I mean, if it can be as soon as possible, because it sounds like time is of the essence of this issue. So if we can, I'm in favor of that.
Okay, can you communicate that to your peers? And I'm going to ask Scott to go to Dave Bunker and communicate that as quickly as we can get the two councils together in a public session to have that discussion, but still put it on our agenda so that if we need to, we can take action at that time.
So when you say that, Mayor, you're referring to November 22nd, so we would want to have, okay, 29th.
29th.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could we also involve the county
Yeah,
commissioners?
we still have to do the canvassing of the votes, and we still need an opportunity to make sure we have adequate time to set up a meeting and have a discussion, and if necessary, involve the county staff and the county commissioners.
Yeah, we can invite commissioners, Richard Nilsson, the Public Works Director.
Yeah.
We can get everybody in the same room and and have the discussion.
Yeah,
And
and
see where we're at.
and
So,
that's I think the best commitment we can make is, but yeah, 2 weeks.
okay.
So,
Okay.
so Tuesday, the 29th at 6.
Can I ask,
Well-
when would okay, so does the county commissioners need to have another meeting to distribute these funds? So what my question is
Yeah, they have not adopted, so there's a separate agreement now. There's one that's just Pleasant Grove and the county.
okay.
So they have not adopted that agreement.
Okay, so when would they meet next to do that?
I think they're holding it right now because we're holding it.
Okay.
Well, but they have a certain number of meetings.
Right.
And as I'm looking at the county calendar, I'm seeing more and more meetings being canceled. We are at November the 15th.
Yeah.
Headed into the Christmas and Thanksgiving weekend. We have a commissioner retiring. There aren't going to be a lot more opportunities to get this action done
Right.
on an agenda. And so we need to step it up so they can step it up. It's probably going to have to be in the first part of December that they're going to have to make their decision.
The county?
And that was my question.
What's your take on that?
Well, no,
Scott?
I think that's right. The county, and they're not going to make any decisions till they know what we're doing. I mean, and we have an agreement written between the two of us that is really the same agreement that Cedar Hills was party to, with just a couple minor tweaks. I mean, just Cedar Hills is removed out of the language. And so our agreement's ready to go, their agreement's ready to go. But they're not going to adopt it until they know that we're going to adopt it.
And,
So-
and the agreement involving both was written already.
Yeah, that's
And
what.
it's just been on ice.
Well, no, that's what Cedar Hills said no, we continued ours.
Right.
But once Cedar Hills said no, then we created ours specifically just with us in the county.
And what I'm saying is there's also a document that was crafted from that includes the participation with both cities.
Absolutely, yeah, that was what was
we
originally
did that
on the
one
table.
months ago.
Yeah,
So if that actually does play out, that one's ready to go.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So what I'm hearing though is, we want to know by November 29th, meaning we need to set up with Cedar Hills, like maybe November 22nd, and we canvass our election and then we move into a
Right.
joint work
So that was my
session.
question. If they're going to meet the first week of December, or make a decision on the first week of December, then we have to have all of our ducks in a row before that point.
I think we need our ducks in a row by the 29th when we make our
Okay.
decision. Whether that's on the 22nd or not, that's up to the whole council. And we've got to coordinate with Cedar Hills. Were there comments over here? I mean, I heard moaning, so I'm wondering if there's comments. Yeah, I did.
I would just say, for anybody that's interested, I've had the same conversations that Cedar Hills has had. I've talked personally with county commissioners and county commissioners-elect, and I'm confident in the way that Cedar Hills is reading the tea leaves. So regardless, I've always been willing to take that approach and say, you know what, I'm convinced they will spend the money. I'm not convinced they'll tell us that in a public meeting, but I'm convinced that they would do that in the end.
Okay, that's good to know. Is that we good? Anything else? Okay. Thank you for coming. We appreciate that. Was there anything else you wanted to?
They can
Okay,
administrate.
thank you. Okay, we have November 22nd's council meeting. The main purpose of this meeting is to do the canvass, and that means the official acceptance of the votes. Now, by then, I think we actually get the official results.
Get them 3 p.m. that day.
So all the absentee, questionable ballots, all of that's resolved. Okay. And that's it. That's the purpose of the meeting.
It'd go fast because you only have one thing to consider, right?
Fast, and this council has never been in the same sentence. Well,
Okay.
Well, if nobody talks and discusses,
I won't say a
it
thing.
will go fast.
Just I. Okay. Okay, neighborhood and staff business, Libby? Nothing? Okay. Ken? Mario? No? Dion? No? Marty?
4,000 North gets paved tomorrow.
Excellent.
Just in
Good time for the
time.
snow.
Yeah.
Just before the snow. Good deal. Dave?
About 5 times over the last 24 hours.
With the Mountain View? Has anything been said yet? Okay. Mike? Has anything been said from you guys? Have you heard?
I've heard things, yeah. We had a couple officers over there, but it's probably not that
Nothing
close.
public confirmed yet. Okay. Sherry?
I went to Wendy's before this, and the kid who helped me at the drive up was in the class with the kid who. So I've heard things. He told me all about it while we were waiting to move forward in the line.
But nothing official. Probably the best source right there.
Yeah. Scissors, apparently. I didn't know that. Thank you for the help with the Veterans Day program. Everybody, various departments and speakers, and it went well. And I have learned a lot and gained a great appreciation from going to all of these programs. So it's been a good opportunity.
Thank you for organizing this. We know it's your favorite thing to do all year. You look forward to it. That and Memorial Day.
Absolutely.
Sherry, thank you for organizing that really quick, though. I know a lot of people, especially Veterans Day, can't attend because it's not an official holiday like Memorial Day where people have time off work and school. And so I had a request from a resident to see if there's another time we could do it even in the evening. I know it's kind of particular on Veterans Day at 11 a.m. and there's meaning behind that. But I think a lot of people can attend that would like to. And he suggested even the evening when families and scout groups could attend. And if that's something that maybe we would want to consider for next year, I think Memorial Day we keep the same, especially because people have it off of work and school. But for the Veterans Day, trying to get more people out is just discouraging all the time and effort that goes into it, and especially the caliber of the people that we have speaking, and then not to have the seats full.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a way that, I don't know, just throwing that out there from a resident who suggested it, I thought it was maybe a bit, not a bad idea.
Yeah, I wonder about the location because it would be.
It would definitely have to be, I think, inside.
Yeah, cold,
whether it's at
cold and
the
dark by the evening.
Yeah. So whether it's at the doTERRA Auditorium or maybe at the high school or something, but maybe something, it would definitely, probably couldn't be at the cemetery, but I think keep the Memorial Day one there. But I'd love to see more people come out. But I think it's just the time and, not being recognized as an official holiday or keeping people away. So.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Sherry? Okay. Denise? No? Scott?
Just a quick update. We met with the school district today, the facilities committee, who makes a recommendation to the school board on tax incentive proposals. Me and the mayor and Daniel Thomas had I thought, a very good meeting. We'll find out here probably in the next week or two what the school district's participation is going to be, but we feel positive moving forward. So next step is getting the county. This ties in a little bit our relationships with the county, but we will be talking with them about their participation as well. We want to get both school and county locked in by early December. We locked in last week, so we're moving forward. That's it.
Tina?
Nothing.
Nothing? No? Nothing?
Dean
Lynn?
Allington's father, one of our.
Pat? Passed away. Do we know what happened?
He's had bad heart all
Heart?
his life,
Yeah.
even back in school.
Yeah. He served with our Board of Adjustment for
Years.
a number of years. It was very instrumental, and Planning Commission helped at the last revision. Yeah.
Funeral's Thursday, I believe.
Thank you. Do you know where?
I know our ward house, 6th Ward lower building on
500 North and
north and
300 East? Okay. All right. Anything said? Eric?
I have a couple items. I happened to be at the Orem City Center when that went down, and to see their first responders respond, but then also to see neighboring ours come rolling up State Street was pretty cool to see the support. So just to get to see how communities react and help each other on that. And then we have tons, like we talked about, we have tons of talented people within our community, and I'm just highlighting one today. Very talented, what do we want to call her?
Writer.
Writer. Leslie Zimmerman. I know people probably have already seen it, but it's called Dream Big. And I think it's probably more for preschoolers. I got it for my grandson, but it's really impressive about different occupations within the community and that she's illustrated and written about. So just impressive what type of individuals we have in our community. And so if you get a chance, she's on Facebook or wherever else, go check the book out.
And so you're going to donate that to the library?
Our library actually already has it.
Oh, okay.
Very impressive.
All right.
So, but I just encourage maybe, I think this is more probably the library board that maybe invite her to a book signing or reading. I don't know what we call those, Sherry. I can't remember.
Great.
But,
sounds good.
Yeah.
And did you say you had something else?
Nope,
Just
that
those
was
two?
it.
Okay. Ben?
Just a couple of invitations. Tomorrow night is the last of the Finance Academy. Is that right?
Yes.
For members of the public that are interested in the Finance Academy, I believe that begins at 6 p.m. and it'll be our final meeting for that group. And then the next day on Thursday, I'm always inviting you guys to awesome things. On Thursday here in Pleasant Grove at the Aroma Tools Event Center there, the Elevate Event Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're having from 6:30 to 8:30 that we're hosting here in our city a celebrity in the justice reform effort, a man named Ray Crone, who was a 10-year incarcerated on prosecutorial misconduct charges for a murder he didn't commit, later exonerated through DNA evidence. The 100th, interestingly enough, the 100th person to be exonerated off of death row since death sentences were re-implemented in 1976. So kind of a neat person to be able to hear, and have him here in Pleasant Grove would be well worth your time to attend if you can. And then I got notice recently that one of our former mayors passed away yesterday as well. And so I don't know if anybody in the audience knows anything about, maybe from the media. Jennifer, do you?
Carnell Haney passed away yesterday. His viewing will be at the open mortuary Thursday from 6 to 8, and his funeral and viewing will be at the Battle Creek 7th Wards, which is the West Building on 200, from 9:30 to 10:30. And, so, yeah, that's the information that I've had to send out.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Anything else?
I think that's all I've got. Thanks. Good meeting.
Very good. All right. No plats, calendar, anything that we need to be aware of right now? So it'll be a very short meeting next week, and then we will enjoy our Thanksgiving holiday. For the canvassing, we need like 2 people. Yeah. Sure. Yes.
We will be, if we're not meeting next week, some of us, we will be doing the Christmas tree lighting on the 28th at 6 o'clock down
6 o'clock. Okay.
I think it's being done, yeah.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Lynn's collecting all of our names. Geez, I was like having a meltdown over here with my.
See what I did last week, right?
We can make some decision. We can grant some authorities so that not every decision has to come back to a committee. Yeah, if it's in the budget and parameters.
Go ahead. That's where I'm at too, but I don't know.
Small price.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't mind going through You're not
We don't have any. Maybe she worked for the day. So, Lisa Young, kind of does the whole sound. She's over the range that gets the painting and does the whole, go up the basement of the library. And maybe, we have the mic there, mic the tree. So, yeah.
Thanks, Kathy.
Really, it's not a